Alright, hi guys. So I've been asked a lot to show how I kind of make these 3D sculptures, so here we go. It's kind of the very beginning of the process to the very end. So here I'm just kind of showing how I make the alcohol ink spread around. Just randomly showing different size leftover YUPO paper pieces I had, and took the colors that I was going to use this time around, which were greens, teals, and purples, kind of making a Joker themed heart. I'm kind of a comic book dork, so I figured that'd be a fun way of doing it. So I'm really just using rubbing alcohol, some of the different type of alcohol ink colors that I have, and a airbrush with just the air to help push the colors around. So just doing that to facilitate the colors that I want to use on this particular piece. So when I do this, I do wear a mask. I do not want to breathe in any type of extra chemicals that are already in the air. However, there will be one point, which I have a feeling many people will not be too thrilled to see in this tutorial. I do take my breathing mask off. It will be when I am burning the YUPO paper. Unfortunately, my fan that I use did break, and one is on order to help blow out the YUPO paper. So I'm doing it the way you probably should not do it in this tutorial, which is just using my mouth to blow on the YUPO paper when I'm manipulating it, instead of using the desk fan that I usually use instead, because I like to try to keep the mask on as much as possible so I'm not breathing in any carcinogens, as the YUPO paper is synthetic, and it is best not to breathe anything else in from anything from our day-to-day lives that we don't already breathe in. So I always do suggest to wear a mask when dealing with even the high concentrate rubbing alcohol, as if you do not have good ventilation, it can be very, very overwhelming. So as you see, just playing around, mixing around the colors, doing some that are just green, teal, some that are just purple. This area is where I'm finally getting into using my hand butane torch to manipulate the YUPO paper. So this is what gets the YUPO paper to form and do the 3D sculpture piece that I've gotten a lot of questions about. The real thing is kind of moving quickly. This is when I'm realizing I kind of can't use the have my mask on anymore. So it's the heat from the butane torch. I do use it at a high rate, so it is a large flame. But you can start seeing how the YUPO paper is bending, manipulating, causing the really cool holes that I call these my heart series, because these end up looking like ventricle valves of a heart. So this is what ends up happening. When I make these, I have no set idea of what any of these pieces are going to look like when they are made. Somehow these pieces over time, just each layer kind of just falls on top of each other the way that it's just meant to be. So I just kind of go for it. I've kind of just, there's no planning involved, and I think that's kind of the best way to go for it. Because this is just some type of medium that you really have no control over the YUPO paper once the flame of the torch hits. So you kind of just have to let it flow and let it go how it wants to go. Right now I'm realizing that the green piece I had was way too large for me to handle. So I cut it in half, and once again, just going with the hand butane torch and just letting it roll. Once again, I usually have a desk fan to help with the air aspect of it, so I'm not breathing directly onto the YUPO paper like I am in this demo. I've kind of learned that it's very helpful to do that with a little portable desk fan. Unfortunately, my recent one broke, so I do usually wear my mask that you saw me wearing earlier during creating these. So YUPO is once again synthetic, so it is best to always wear a mask when burning it, and also just with any type of high concentrate of using a rubbing alcohol, and just making sure, as always, to have proper ventilation. But you can kind of see how each piece begins to take its own shape and does its own thing. And this is when I just start playing around to see like how the layers are going to fit on top of one another. And they just all start to fall where I want it. That's when I really start getting excited. And I'll just use a hot glue gun to stick the pieces how I want it. What was interesting about this piece is that I thought I wanted the teal piece on top, but for some odd reason, the teal just didn't seem to be wanting to stick to the purple. It must have been the universe's way of telling me that's just not how this one's going to fly. And after a few minutes of kind of futzing around with it, I just realized that this wasn't how this one was going to go. And I eventually actually switched it around, that the purple piece on that one was going to be the main focal top piece on this, because it was not sitting correctly. But the hot glue you really just need to use in a few like key places to help it structurally stay sound. And it's really just, I don't use any type of 3D modeling pieces or anything. It's just really hot glue. But surely but surely I'm going to come to the realization that the teal piece is not meant to be on top like I originally felt it was supposed to be. This for me coming up is actually a really cool aha moment. This one piece I really was excited to get placed onto the sculpture. But what's great is that if you add a little bit of heat and start just moving the YUPO paper, you really can start bending it in any direction, which caused this really great effect, as you can see, that I'm trying to show off in the space. But it really was this kind of almost feathery type of moment that kind of came from the YUPO paper to give this really cool layer in the back. And it was from just like pushing one piece back, but then heating up the YUPO paper and moving it forward. So I thought that was a lot of fun and a good way to utilize that specific piece. So the piece could still lay flat when I do decide to mount it. Well, flatter, still have dimension. So to me, that was just a really great usage of that particular teal piece. I'm now using thin pieces of YUPO paper, just some like leftover, pieces and strips that I had and colored them, to kind of make some interesting detailed pieces to add on to the sculpture. I've personally not tried this before, but I thought it'd be kind of a cool thing to do. You have to be really quick and careful how much you manipulate the YUPO paper, because it can destructuralize very, very quickly. So if you do something like this, you just have to be really careful that you don't melt it too much, that you end up making it something that cannot be actually used. Another cool thing that you can then do with pieces like this is, which I ended up doing, is almost making it almost a ribbon effect, just by, once again, giving a little heat in certain structural places and then just bending it and then cooling it off to just keep the specific shape that you want. So this is about time where I start getting very, very excited, because everything's really starting to come together, and something that was just so flat and so 2D is now just has a complete life of its own. To me, this is extremely satisfying because this is just something I never even knew was possible with this material. And every single time that I end up making one of these pieces and creating one of these type of sculptural works, I always discover something new and something different. And I really just find it interesting how each piece just kind of finds its own way into fitting into one another, each layer. So, once again, these are never kind of planned or thought out. Really, it's just picking a color scheme and seeing what pieces of YUPO paper different sizes for each different layer, and then kind of just going for it and playing with it until it kind of fits where it's meant to be. And it's really something different and exciting that I get a lot of joy out of.